The reason it's so important to have somebody like Lieutenant General Toolan here is that he's here, and both of them wanted to come up and be with these Gold Star parents because under his command, he's lost Marines. And I will tell you that for a commander who has a Marine killed or a soldier killed executing his orders, when that individual dies, a little bit of that commander dies too. And he understands his own feelings, and he empathizes very much with you.
I am somewhat intimidated by the fact that the speaker last year was a close friend of mine and Helen's, General John Kelly and his wife Karen. And for those of you that were here last year, you know that it was an extraordinarily moving moment when John gave his wife a Gold Star. We also had decided, General Kelly and myself, to take our sons to the battlefield at the Somme and to spend some time there studying that. And I can tell you that I know it had an impact on my son, and I know it impacted on Robert as well. Just the devastation that war does bring. And for those of you who have seen the battlefields in Europe, you know it really brings you up close and personal when you see the trench warfare that went on during World War I. So it was sort of an epic day. Well, I left Belgium, and the next time I saw Robert, he was graduating from University of Florida, and, excuse me, Florida State University. Gotta get that right, right? And he then enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I asked him, I said, Robert, I said, why you enlisted in the Marine Corps? And he said, well, that's the way my father did it. He enlisted, and then he then moved up into get a commission. And I said, wow, that's tremendous. I mean, just the fact that, the father and his image and his impact on his son, and he made that call. Robert then took a commission, and he became a member of 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. And he went back, he went to Afghanistan in 2010, and on 9 November he was killed. And he was killed by an IED. Really a fine young man, just like the young men that I've seen portrayed today at the memorial ceremony. And that's how I look and I regard the quality of the people that are serving our country today. It's tremendous. It's like Robert Kelly's. It's amazing. When his dad gave the memorial comments in front of everybody, one of the things he said which stuck with me was the fact that he wanted to apologize to many of the Gold Star families who he, like I and many other commanders, have had contact with. And that's never really easy, and he would tell the families, he'd say, I'm sorry for your loss, and I understand how you feel. Because at that moment, at the memorial of his own son, he said, I apologize, because I didn't understand how you felt. And I didn't understand until I lost Robert, and now I realize it's unfathomable. And that was the word he used. Losing a child is unfathomable. Now, Helen and I have, we've shared many worries about our kids. Some of you know I got a son that did a couple of tours in Afghanistan, 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. I got a daughter that's in Afghanistan right now in Kabul. And so, you share those worries. You remember walking him across the street and saying, hey, hold my hand. Where you going? And now all of a sudden he's walking the streets by himself in places like Sangin and Helmand Province and other places. But those worries are not a loss, and it's hard to understand. As a Marine leader, and as General Myatt just said earlier, it's tough to realize that some of the decisions that you make lead to the loss of a life and creation of a hero. I think that it's one of those great ironies of being a commander is those that you love the most, in order to save them, must put them in harm's way. Because you can't sit idly by. There's action that needs to be taken. There's a natural bias for action. Inaction is never going to work. My wife, Helen, as was mentioned earlier, is a key partner in my whole relationship as a commander. And even though we did memorials in theater for our guys that we lost, the fact is the real difficulties were when my wife faced the families at home at those memorials. It's a special relationship. But who better than a Blue Star mother to understand a grieving family? But the challenge for us really is to make sure that all their effort, all their work means something, that the sacrifice was worth it. I think that one of the greatest fears among the families of Gold Star families is that you worry, is that sacrifice worth it? In Iraq, back in 2003, I had an EOD technician who was a young sergeant. He was tremendous. And he made friends with the Iraqis throughout the route that we took going up into Baghdad. He would actually go around and travel homes, and where there was unexploded ordnance, he would clear it for the locals because, you know, parents were concerned that this unexploded ordnance might affect their children and the way they're back and forth to school or whatever. And this guy would go out and every day he would clear unexploded ordnance. The following year, he was with me in 2004, where we, again, it's a different scenario, a lot of the potential for IEDs all over the place. And as the EOD chief at the time, now a staff sergeant, he had a lot of work to do. And one day, we had a little firefight in a place called Karma. Some of the Marines like to call it Bad Karma. But we were in there, and I heard that one of my guys in the outpost at a school in Karma, rockets had been fired at him off of the top of a car. So I headed towards Karma from where I was, and I got there, and it was amazing. This car had somehow they had fashioned rockets on top of the car. The guys, the Iraqi insurgent was able to get a rocket off. It hit the school building. No real casualties at the time, but just amazing to think, you know, the extent to which some of these insurgents would go to put rockets on top of a car and just fire them willy-nilly. So I went over to observe, and some of the rockets were on the ground, and so it was considered unexploded ordnance. So I scoped it out. We put standard, we isolated the objective area sort of as we were supposed to do. And I looked at this car, I looked at the rockets, then I went over to the school building to see how the guys were doing in their position. And as I entered the building, I heard a large blast. And when I looked out, the car with the rockets exploded. And there was an IED in the back, in the trunk of the car. And the real technique was for the insurgent to bring attention to this very weird contraption and bring EOD technicians in close enough to the unexpended ordnance on the ground and then blow up the vehicle, which killed Staff Sergeant Clark. And I know that it's very close and personal to me because not only did I spend a lot of time with him, and I tell his story often, but the fact is that, you know, it could have easily have been myself. And you know, there's a certain little guilt that you have when you come back from a situation like that and go, you know, why wasn't that me? The answer is duty. There is a point beyond which America should tolerate. And that's when we stand our duty. Your sons, your daughters stood their duty. And we should be very thankful and proud of that. It's interesting, the martyrs of history, those we honor today, fulfilled that duty. As Reagan said in his words at Gettysburg, as Lincoln said in his words in Gettysburg, summed it up pretty well. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work, which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us here to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion, and that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
You know, I do believe that the parents of the Marines and sailors and soldiers who were and are now under the command of General Toolan feel blessed because they know that their sons and daughters are led by a wonderful, wonderful person. So I would thank you so much.